Oh, sorry. I'll repeat that. Call into order the Citizens Oversight Committee meeting, March 13th, 2024. So we have a call to order.
Member Adams,
Present.
Member Dilworth, Member Erickson, absent, Member Cashel.
Here.
Member McCubbin.
Here.
Member McKay,
Here.
Member Nachor,
Here.
Vice Chair Engdahl,
Here.
Chair Sheehan.
Here.
Thank you.
I'll need a motion. I assume you all got a copy of the minutes when you got the copy of the agenda from Letty last Friday. So if anybody has any objection, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thank
of
you.
September
Second.
13th. Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye. Yes.
Any opposed? Thank you. Now it's COC members' announcements. Did I see anybody? I have a small one.
Sure, I'll make an announcement.
Okay, go ahead.
I was, due to a conflict, I wasn't able to attend a couple of the strategic plan meetings. So I went and watched went for the video on the website, and I saw 50 views for those two videos, which means that those meetings reached more than the folks who were present at that time. So that's just observation.
Nice, thank you. I have a small announcement. I'm also on the Sonoma County Alliance Board of Directors, and our own Eddie Cummins will be presenting on the April 3rd breakfast meeting. So I have this if anybody wants to see that. And thank you for doing that, Eddie. That's
Wow, that word travels fast. I just
Cool.
accepted that this morning.
Hey, I'm in on the in crowd, all right? And now we have the general manager's.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair and members of the COC. I have 5 items today. I wanted to go over the COC member selection process, obviously give you an update on ridership, talk a little bit about some of our construction progress, wanted to talk about the partial system closure we have coming up, and last but not least, talk about our free fare pilot program. And then, of course, at the end, I'll open it up for any questions you may have. Some of this information this group is very familiar with, but for others, to provide staggered terms, the initial appointments were established for 1, 2, and 3 years. The appointment for 3 members, our current members, expires in May of 2024. These vacancies have been advertised. They were advertised from January 18th through February 29th. We received 17 applications, including 2 current members. On April 3rd at the board meeting, I am going to request that the board appoint an ad hoc committee to evaluate applications and make recommendations to the full board on April 17th for approval by the SMART Board of Directors. These selected members will serve a term of 3 years, and the new or reappointed COC members will attend or at least be available to attend the May 22nd meeting. Moving on to ridership, February average weekday ridership was 2,492. That was 17% higher than February 23, but obviously down from our previous months, likely due to rain. I know, I've said that to this group before, but rain does have an impact on our ridership. March average weekday ridership to date is 2,581. It's 26% higher than March of 23. It's slightly higher than it was in February, but starting today, I anticipate that our ridership is going to rebound quickly with all the nice weather. The forecast looks awesome. Likewise, February average weekday boardings were down 8% from FY 2019. This is the first, as you can see on the slides, the first time we've been under 2019 for weekend boardings in quite some time. But again, I think that with the nice weather, we'll see that rebound quickly. Looking at monthly ridership, February ridership was 62,090. That was 25% over February of 23, but 15% under where we were in February 2019. On a more positive note, if you look at the 12-month ridership, overall, we are currently tracking 4% above 2019. So we're continuing to stay above that mark. Pathway counts, we had over 47,000 bicycle and pedestrian users in February, and that was 11% higher than the previous year. Moving on to construction. This is a picture of the contractor setting concrete formwork for the Windsor Station platform. And this is a picture of them placing concrete in the framework for the Windsor Station platform. This is removing the concrete formwork at the station after the concrete walls were poured. We have also been making significant progress on Petaluma North. In this picture, workers are removing the bolts from the old crossing panels at McDowell Boulevard. And in this photo, they're laying out the concrete ties at Petaluma North Station in preparation for the upcoming track shutdown on March 23rd and 24th. Speaking of partial system closures, we are planning for a 2 weekend shutdowns on the northern piece, the northern half of our system. The first will be the weekend of March 23rd and 24th. And the second partial system closure will be the weekend of April 13th and 14th. And during these weekends, the system will only operate between Petaluma and Larkspur. Getting into some of the particulars, the Petaluma North Station construction requires a weekend service closure from airport to Cotati Station. Again, that'll be March 23rd and 24th. And SMART will be operating the weekend schedule, but only from Petaluma downtown to Larkspur. And this section of track at the Petaluma North area will be removed and replaced with a switch and a gauntlet track. Just to refresh your memories, SMART uses gauntlet tracks at stations to allow wider freight trains to pass and narrower passenger trains to pull into the station. All stations north of the Ignacio Y were constructed with gauntlet tracks to allow passage of freight trains. And you can see it's kind of an image down below to kind of show you how that works, how the tracks work together. There will be a second closure in April for the railroad reconstruction at McDowell Boulevard. That'll be on April 13th and 14th. SMART again will operate the weekend schedule from Petaluma downtown to Larkspur, and outreach will be conducted for both closures, including ferry transfers at Larkspur. And last but not least, beginning April 1st, 2024, youth ages 18 and under and seniors ages 65 and older will enjoy fare-free rides on SMART. Conductors will continue to check passenger fares. Youth and seniors may be requested to provide proof of age, such as a state ID, driver's license, or student ID. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I kind of like an open format, so if anybody has a question, please go ahead, Lucy. Thanks for that report.
Thank you.
Your mic, just a little closer to your face. Thank you.
I have a question about the Fare Free program for youth and seniors. I assume you're anticipating an increase in ridership for that particular group, which I understand to be a price-sensitive group. What do you foresee is going to happen at the end of June in 2025 when you're planning to terminate the program?
Yeah, so I think the board will have to make a decision as to whether they extend it or they they cancel it. That's why we're referring to it as a pilot program, to see what we gain from it, and or maybe even what we don't gain from it. It's hard to estimate what this is going to do to ridership. Really, the one talking point that we have is that when we did this last summer for youth, we saw a 152% increase in ridership versus 2019. So it was substantial increase in ridership. We have high hopes for senior riders, but again, time will tell what that's going to look like.
So, yeah. Are there any studies that could help predict whether there'll be a significant fall off or whether it will have encouraged the habit of riding so significantly that people will stay?
I think so. It's interesting to me, and it's anecdotal, right? It's anecdotal. But people that try the train seem to enjoy the train and to use it over and over and over again. A lot of times it's just getting people out the first time and having them try it and experience it. You know, I have the opportunity to get out and speak a lot and go to a lot of different groups. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't hear from the seniors that it's about the money. I don't see, you know, obviously it is for some, but for most, what I hear from them is we don't like your technology. We don't want to use your app. We don't want to use the Clipper card. We do not want to tap on. We do not want to tap off. We don't want to put anything in the vending machine. We don't want to deal with any of that. And it's a barrier. And so that's one of the things that we talked to the board about. So that's more the feedback that I receive, that the seniors see as the barrier to riding the train is the use of the technology versus the money. Now with students, I think that that's a whole different animal, right? I do think that the free fare for youth really helps out mom and dad, helps students be able to get out, move around.
Thank you.
Yep.
So what's the alternative to the technology?
Yeah, it's a good question. On the bus systems, it's a cash, it can be cash, right? You have like a fare box on there, but that becomes a whole different animal to have to deal with and have to manage. So, but yeah, it's something that has to be looked at in the future. I think it's about, number one, getting people used to using the technology, and thinking about simplifying ease of use. I know that the new Clipper 2 program is coming out. That's more of a system where you may be able just to tap your credit card on and off, and whether that'll make things better and more user friendly, we will see.
It's kind of ridiculous that in this day and age, people can't tap in and out. I mean, it's just way
Yeah,
easy.
I'm not here to defend it one way or the other. I'm just not, this is the feedback that I receive, is that, even from some of our staff members that have parents who are seniors, and some of the challenges that they voice that they have with utilizing the technology.
So Sandy and then Sherry and then Anthony?
Eddie, do we have any kind of an educational, the video or anything that you can put online
Yeah.
that people could look at?
Yes, we do have some videos out that talk about how to utilize the technology, how to ride the system, things of that nature. We do have that out there.
We should maybe make that more of a priority if that's what you're seeing.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
One answer to how to address the technology question is exactly what Smart's doing, which is make it free. Don't need a card for that, except for to show an ID maybe. So that's one good answer. First, just some brief comments. I think your outreach on the closure was excellent. I've heard it from 4 different sources now as a person who regularly rides the train. So I think that was very good. Just as a person who regularly rides the train and hearing different comments, I've heard several people mention, oh, it's coming free for seniors. So people have noticed and heard it. I'm not sure how the word got out, but it seems to have. In addition to, you already know this, but the grumbling about spots for bikes, I hear that quite a bit.
Mhm.
My last comment/question, but it's a long-term question, not just for today, is I'm starting to see a problem that's a sign of success, which is that some of our pathways, you've got a lot of use of pedestrians, and it's suddenly no longer this highway for bikes. I see that around the Roseland area. It is awesome. If you go in the evening time between Sebastopol and Hearn, people are out with their kids, they're walking, kids are on bikes and scooters. That's a sign of success. That is great. But it can't simultaneously be a three-way for bikes. If I'm riding through on my bike, I'm going really slow. I'm announcing myself constantly. So just something to think about as we go forward with building more pathway. There are design elements that can reduce conflict. For example, places that have a lot of use, you'll see 3 lanes, 2 ways for the bikes and 1 for the peds. It doesn't mean the peds can't use the rest of it. It just means that they're watching or have nothing get stuck in their ears when they're walking in the bike lane. There may be other ideas out there, but just a heads up that as this pathway becomes more and more used, there's a potential for conflict, and how can we be proactive in making sure that we can continue to provide for all the different interested users. Thank you.
I took note, and that's a great problem to have.
So Eddie, with the upcoming free senior and youth, fair program, what is the fiscal impact to your agency?
About $280,000 a year.
So so in this case, you're gonna recoup that by maybe, I don't know, increasing the fare, or what's the idea to,
Well, we wouldn't be recouping the fare. If you may remember, I think it was at the last meeting, I showed you the IPPM model. Do you remember that?
yes.
And so it's it all depends on how you look at it. If your goal is fare box recovery, then obviously this makes that have an impact, a negative impact, right? So right now we're at about 6%. Where we finished 23, we project that this will probably bring us down to about 5%. So drop us 1%. But when you look at the investment per passenger mile, it's completely different. So, you can increase what you collect in fares. And if your ridership doesn't grow, then your investment per passenger mile actually goes up rather than going down. And so the idea is that you're making this investment and you're looking at it as a way to grow ridership, which spreads those costs over additional riders and actually lowers that number and is more efficient and effective. That's the thought and the idea. I think the other way that the board looked at this is that, you can go out with marketing campaigns, and to be honest with you, you can spend $200,000 or $300,000 pretty easy on a marketing campaign, and would it gain you the same number of riders that you're going to get with this program?
I mean, that's that's a really, really noble cause, but it's like, for this, for those who feel like, that $280,000 seems to be like, okay, it's a waste of money. How are you going to reassure those riders that the $280,000, price tag is worth the effort? Because you will still hear all these people who are like, oh, we need to close down the system, or, we need to, we need something else for SMART to be, I don't know, like either profitable or cost neutral. So it's like, how are you going to deal with those skeptics?
Okay, so first off, I just say it just as plain as I can say it. SMART will never be profitable. Just like no transit agency in the country is profitable, right? It's just that's just not the way it works. We're always going to have a sales tax to be able to operate. So being profitable is not something that's on our horizon. That's not something that the SMART Board of Directors is looking at. Of how do we become profitable, right? We know there's always going to have to be some level of subsidy, to run the system. Now, obviously, we want the trains full. We want our fare box recovery to be as high as it possibly can, but there are trade-offs there. And right now, when I went and presented this topic to the board, my question to them was very simple. Do you want to focus on fare box recovery, or do you want to focus on ridership? Because those are two very different things of what type of decisions you will make. The direction that the board of directors gave me was continue to focus on ridership. And then that's when they presented the idea of, asking staff to go back and take a look at what would a project of offering free fare for seniors and youth look like. We came back to the next meeting, we told them what the cost would be, and they made that decision.
Thank you for your
Well-
clarification.
Yep, thank you.
And I'll just add that was presented to the board, ridership being the number one growth,
Mhm.
what do you call it?
Yeah.
Objective. And then Heather did a really good job of doing the cost analysis on that. So wasn't a surprise.
Mhm.
And I think that was a very reasonable amount of money. And the kids are especially excited because that's our future ridership. So we get kind of a double indemnity there.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Just wanted to register full-throated support for that focus on ridership above the other goals.
Thank you.
What exactly was the marketing strategy for the free fare pilot program?
The marketing strategy.
Yeah, so like how did folks on the train that Sherry was on hear about the program
So we've been talking about it a lot. Number one, I'm out speaking quite a bit. We've been doing a lot on social media and getting the word out there. We will be doing a press release. You know, you always, this is the internal conversation is when do you do that? When's the right time? Because obviously you don't want people to confuse people. So if we would have done it a month ago, you know, people are showing up being like, no, it's free. Right? We're like, no, not till April. So anyway, it's all geared up. We're ready to go. We're working on that press release. We'll be getting it out timely in a way that will spread the word. But I hear it everywhere I go. That's one of the number one questions that I get these days when I go out and speak is when does that start? And people are excited about it. And to be honest with you, I hear from the seniors, they're just glad they don't have to tap anything. So. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry.
Is there any direct outreach happening with area high schools? Or any sort of direct approach to reach, to reach high school students
Yeah.
who probably aren't reading the Press Democrat or the IJ?
I'm Julia Gonzalez, Communications and Marketing Manager for SMART. So our campaign to promote the youth and senior fare free program or pilot program will involve direct outreach to the schools and also to the senior community working with senior centers. We also have a pretty robust newsletter that reaches 10,000 people, and that gets shared further afield. We are going to be running Spanish language radio ads beginning in April that will reach the larger footprint is going to be in Sonoma County just because of the radio station's bandwidth, but there will also be advertisements in Marin and Sonoma County in print publications. This is a really beautiful program to market. It's telling somebody that something is free is pretty easy to do. And so our partners across both counties will also help us get the word out for this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to add that the strategy is also to highlight that this is about increasing use of public transit, right? It's the end game is to increase our ridership at SMART, but really it's also to change behavior and encourage people to leave their vehicle behind and try public transit. So there's implications there in terms of benefits to the environment and in terms of congestion, and we're going to lean on some of that in our messaging as well.
Cool. And you might consider reaching out to senior, like retirement communities and HOAs, especially along the route, just to directly connect with those folks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julia. I can't wait till July when I'm 65 and then I can get on the train.
Ride all day, every day.
I'll probably pay, but it's okay. If you're finished with your report,
Yes.
we'll hear public comment on non-agenda items. And no hands up. Okay, we'll move along to Heather's presentation. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Heather.
So the presentation is pretty short, but the amount of work that needs to be done in the next few months is not. So I wanted to review the calendar for the budget preparation with you. It's in your packet, but I wanted to talk about a few additional things leading up to that. The big one we want to have on your radar, there are a couple dates that I want to make sure you're aware of. And the first is the budget workshop with the board on May 1st. So we highly encourage you to attend that. That will be the first time that we really discuss the budget in detail with them, the programs and policies of theirs and how we're going to implement those through the budget. And then we'll be getting feedback on that to further refine the budget and move towards getting that prepared for them. However, at that same time, when we shortly thereafter, we'll put out the budget for public comment. And in between public comment opening and closing is when we have our meeting with the COC. So hopefully we'll have something other than just theoretical information that we can share with you, that we can actually get specific input on at that meeting and for the next several weeks. So you just don't have to provide input at that day, but also will give you a couple weeks to digest the information, both from the board workshop and then the workshop or the meeting we have with you on the 22nd. That's why the 22nd was also important when Eddie mentioned that the new or returning members will be available for that also. Again, the public comments are due on the 31st. And then we'll be presenting to the board for approval on the 19th of June. So between when we receive the public comments and we prepare the final document, we spend time reviewing those comments, seeing if they need to be incorporated. If not, we also respond to the comments. So what I've done the last couple of years is I'll actually respond to the individual if I know who it is. Sometimes people do it anonymously, but most of the time they provide their information. I'll respond to them to let them know if we've incorporated those comments or not, and if we have, why or why not. And then that also goes into the packet for the board to review when they adopt the final budget. I do want to mention that the 19th of June, we may be moving that meeting because that is Juneteenth. So that may get moved a day or two or a week or two in there. So that's why I put the date might move a little bit, but it will be in June because we have to adopt a budget by the end of June. So there's motivation there to make sure we have a meeting. Also in the April meeting, the April 17th meeting, not the one on the 3rd, but on the 17th, we'll just be kind of laying out the budget again, just a reminder every year about kind of the makeup of the budget, what's included in there, the fact that we are going through this process right now with a strategic plan and that it will inform some of that. We still have the 4 pillars, but some of the information that comes out of that will help inform where we move forward with the budget, or we may have to incorporate some of those things later on once we get further down the line with a strategic plan. So the timing's just a little off because our strategic plan covers fiscal year 25, but that's also, we need to do the budget sooner than later. So there might be a little bit of overlap there. So with that, that's kind of our plan. We're in full force right now, getting information from all of our areas, and having them fill out a lot of forms and spreadsheets. Everybody's super thrilled about it always. And I'd be glad to take any questions about process or timeline or content, any of that you may have.
I'm a little unclear as to what form the COC's input is going to take in any kind of formal way. We're having this feedback and comments meeting. Is that going to be translated into a document that we will approve, or is it just we will give the feedback at the time and that might or might not influence what's happening?
So it could be done either way. In the past, it's been pretty informal in that we've sat around and you guys have given me input, and then I go back and look at that, compare it to other input, talk about it with Eddie, the board, and sometimes we include that and sometimes we don't. But the COC can take a more formal direction and actually provide written comments based on what's discussed here and additional comments that you get from people after they've had time to review it. And then a document could be submitted by the COC to me by the 31st for formal. So either way is acceptable. I think it's really what you guys feel more comfortable with. And it's always helpful for me if it's documented in writing, so I can refer to it later on. But again, it can be more informal if you guys want to do it that way. It's really up to you.
Thank you.
We don't currently have a policy one way or the other, but I always encourage people to send in their questions, and we have each other's email addresses and we can discuss, and we can forward things through Letty, who can forward it to all of us without breaking the Brown Act. So there's lots of different ways to communicate. So I want everybody to feel comfortable to do that.
Yeah, I just want to add that you do have a policy on the bylaws on how you can formally submit to the board. You can, as a group, you can make your recommendations, and then it can be formally submitted to the board.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarity. Should have known.
Yes, we definitely want to have the feedback from the COC. I want to make that very clear. We definitely want the feedback. I mean, that's a big part of, the financial piece of this, is making sure that we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and we structured the meeting. We remember we timed this one pretty carefully so it could have enough information that we would be making a presentation where you could actually know what's going into it and have something to comment on, but not too late in the process that we couldn't incorporate anything in there. So that was, it was hard to come up with that right timing. So that's was specifically why we came up with that date.
And that was a lot of effort too. Appreciate that.
Just the document that we're going to be able to review, I'm assuming it'll have year-on-year comparisons next to each other. Is it also potentially going to have notes or annotations where if we see something's jumped 300% year over year, so we don't have to, if you very clearly know why that is, just more of a suggestion, the more information you share in advance, the more productive the time together can be.
Yeah, we typically have the current fiscal year or the full previous fiscal year, which would be fiscal year 23, the current year that we're in, our estimates, and then a proposal for the new one, and then you can see the differences between those. And then for the board meeting, we may not have it all the way done for that, but for the board meeting, when they adopt the final, we actually show what the differences are, if there are differences and why. Due to the timing between it, and it won't be fully solidified at that point that we come to you, we may have to answer those questions verbally versus having them all worked out at that time, but yes.
I'm also wondering just mechanically if there's a way to take the minutes from our May 22nd COC meeting on the budget and ensure that that is in the packet of the board members as they go into their next board meeting. I think that could save a lot of time and effort in terms of having us coming up with something written. That's more of a procedural or process question.
That's a Letty question on whether that's possible or not.
I don't provide detailed minutes. They're abbreviated minutes. We could come up with something in the middle, or I could work on something if they would need to be detailed, but then we come into a conflict where, detail could be misconstrued in many different ways.
Yeah, I just think if we're going to spend 2 hours together coming up with all these suggestions and none of the board members see them, it's not that it's time wasted, but we obviously, if we're all putting in the effort and time, we want to make sure as wide an audience gets that information as possible.
Can I make a suggestion? Just hearing Zach's comment, and then also Tom, your useful information. What if instead at the end of our meeting, we come up with a succinct, statement or input to the board? That's our formal comment from the COC to the board, because the truth is they're not going to read the whole minutes. And maybe they will, but it's a lot to ask someone to read through the full minutes of a meeting, whereas us succinctly summarizing in bullet points what our recommendations are or comments are could be more likely to be read. And it sounds like there's a formal way to do that.
Also, just remember what I said. Any comments that we receive, that I receive, so if you send them to me and CC the board at least, or send them to me and I'll get them, I put them in my write-up, right? So all the comments I have go into the write-up, and then I discuss those at the meeting to let them know what comments we received. The year one, we didn't receive any comments. The second year I was here, I got 5. Last year, we got quite a few, right? So the more outreach we get with and last year we sent it to the list of the Julia list of 10,000 or whatever. So we had a lot more comments. So that's also a way that the board will hear about them, at least if they don't read the packet even, they'll hear from me what the comments were and whether or not we put them in the document.
I'm required as chair to report out of the COC to the board twice a year, I believe. So, that's an excellent place for that to happen. You have to communicate with me that that's what you want to see. Okay, any more comments? Seeing none, back to the agenda. And that was your presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Emily, I believe we have a presentation from presented by our planning manager, Emily Betts. Thank you.
So I'm going to kick this one off and then I will turn it over to Emily. And just as a reminder, this is our workshop. We're really looking for some feedback. The idea is here is to kind of give you idea. And I know many of you have attended. I've seen you on some of the sessions that we've done, workshops with the community. So thank you for being a part of that. But what we wanted to do today is just kind of provide an update of where we are, what we've heard to this point, and then get your feedback. Are we headed in the right direction? Is there something else we need to be focused on? But again, this is a big part of the COC's focus with the strategic plan. So we really want to hear your feedback. We want to make sure that that we're doing what you want us to do with this. So with that, we could pull up the presentation. So just to kind of start us out, talk about the strategic plan in general. Strategic plan helps to define the strategic direction of the organization, establishes our goals, our objectives, and actions in line with SMART's vision and mission. Promotes collaboration, collective responsibility, and probably most importantly, accountability. 2019 strategic plan was adopted in 2019, and it is required to be updated every 5 years. So the plan that we would be working on now would be the 2024 strategic plan. We're using, the Smart House as the foundation for this plan. And as you've seen many times, it provides our values, which are safety, integrity, stewardship, continuous improvement. It outlines our strategic objectives, really those most important things that we need to be focused on, which is ridership, pathways, extensions, and freight. It outlines what our mission is. We connect communities, and our vision is smarter transportation for a smarter tomorrow. And so as we look at the strategic plan process, we refine our objective areas, we set our goals, strategies, and actions, and then we draft the strategic plan. And then ultimately we get to the final strategic plan, and we'll likely be there by the end of December. And so we put a we are here marker in there just to let you know that we're kind of in this refining objective areas and in between setting goals and strategies and actions. So our workshops have been underway. Thank you for number one, thank you for attending and listening in, and thank you for your feedback on that. So these workshops are underway. We've had good attendance so far. We've had somewhere between 30 and 60 attendees at each meeting. We have completed 3 workshops so far. We completed the SWOT analysis on January 31st. We completed ridership on February 7th. And we completed pathways on February 28th. We do have upcoming workshops. We'll be talking about extensions tomorrow night. And then on March 27th, we'll be doing the workshop on freight. And with that, I would like to turn it over to our Emily Betts.
There it is. Can you hear me? Okay. So this is also a workshop, and a lot of the content here is going to be summarizing what we've heard at our 3 community workshops so far. What we're going to do is I'm going to run through the process and some of the results that we heard from each of those, and then we'll take a break and we'll discuss each one separately. I know it's going to be a lot of content. We're checking in with you both on the process and on the content. It would be a lot to analyze each thing individually, but I still am going to try to take my time so that you can digest and sort of think, are we covering everything here, right? So the first one was a SWOT analysis. So, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is a chance to sort of check in for the agency and see if those areas are lining up with where we're headed in our strategic plan. That's fine. And I don't expect you to be able to read all of these, but this is just showing the type of process that we did. So for each of these 4 areas, we used a tool called Mentimeter, where people were given a QR code, or they went to a website and they could use their phone, on a website. And it was just open, right? It was that people were asked, what do you think are the strengths of SMART? What do you think are the weaknesses? I think they could put into 3, up to 3 each. And so it became a word cloud. And you can see some of the things that stand out here, strengths, clean, bike-friendly, good infrastructure. I'll run through the lists on the next page, but I wanted you to have an idea about how the process went. Okay, so for each of the 4 areas, we combed through all of the responses and collected them into around 10 emerging themes for each of them. So for the strengths, the public felt they were modern, clean, quiet, comfortable train, a bike-friendly system, reliable, punctual, strong leadership and staff, good quality assets, the pathway, a fun, friendly, and scenic riding experience, affordable, a good alternative to driving, community-focused, and the locations of the stations. Next slide. Weaknesses. Gaps in the pathway, gaps in service, connections to other transit. The system's not complete. First and last mile connections, the ferry connection, public perception, lack of awareness of what we're doing at SMART. Too little advertising, a single track system, low density, limited transit-oriented development around the stations. Understaffed, limited destinations, low ridership, and financial viability. Again, these are public responses, public perception. So opportunities, the public felt these were the top opportunities for the strategic plan to promote and cater services for non-commute travel, improve our onboard amenities like Wi-Fi or the bar, more marketing, outreach, and partnerships, improve first last mile solutions, expand our service area, increase connections, free or reduced fare programs, facilitating smart growth, improving the pathway, stationary amenities, and service frequency. And finally, threats. Top threats to SMART: sales tax renewal and opposition, public perception and misinformation, financial viability, cost escalation, inefficiency in meeting travel demands, as already outlined on the other slide. Project delivery challenges due to staffing or lawsuits, competing travel options, including the highway widening, insufficient ridership growth, changes in travel demand due to work from home, security and environmental threats, and other commuting priorities. So, given all that, do you think the results of the SWOT analysis cover the major areas of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? And moreover, do you think this approach makes sense as developing a framework and a context for strategy areas? So I know that was a lot to go through, but I'd be interested to hear anything that stood out for you.
Okay, Jerry?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thank you, Emily. I think, I guess the first comment I have is that I think our job as the COC is to give voice to the extent we can to folks who don't go to meetings. You can't summarize the comments from the people who didn't show up, right? That's our job. I'm not saying I can speak for all of the folks who don't come. I don't know that, but I'm just laying that out there as something I see as a task of ours throughout this process. I think it's already in there, but as a person who commutes by train, I can tell you I am on time more often than any of my car commuting coworkers, and folks who do not commute along a congested corridor do not understand the value of the reliability of SMART. So I just want to make sure that's highlighted as a strength. There's a weakness that a threat that I know you all are aware of. And if you don't think this belongs in the strategic plan, convince me that it's going to be addressed in some other way. I just want to make sure I'm giving voice to the issue of climate resiliency of our infrastructure. We're in a place with very low-lying infrastructure that has been underwater in the past. It's very disruptive to those of us who rely on the train. You're on it. You know, I know you're aware of this situation, but help the public who's concerned about this and us to understand at some point in the strategic planning process, either if there's a reason it doesn't belong in there or if it does.
No, I think it does belong in there. I think that's a good point. Yeah, definitely something that needs to be highlighted and thought about.
Great. The only, in terms of your question, does the SWOT analysis provide an appropriate framework? I think it's excellent, but there's just a few things it can miss, you know, so let's just make sure it's all of our jobs. The staff is awesome at this, all of you. It's our job too, to be taking the big picture and always taking a step back. Is there something we missed with this? So as long as we, you know, we hear from you, you're willing to hear those things and it's our job to provide them. So yes, overall, it's a good framework. Thank you.
Right, I've got Lucy and then Anthony.
I wasn't.
Push your button off then. Oh, thank you. Anthony?
So in the SWOT analysis, in the threats portion of the analysis, I see there the competing priorities between serving the North Bay and serving East, let's say Napa, Solano counties. I don't know if SMART has been, you know, like informed about the city of Vallejo wanting passenger rail service through their community, in which SMART could provide, you know, additional input for them. Because when I saw their, you know, like there's in like on their social media page that they are expressing interest in linking Vallejo with the rest of the North Bay through passenger rail, I immediately reminded myself maybe SMART should help out on this, because there is a viable connection for passenger rail. There is existing track through Vallejo that could be utilized to link that large city of about 100,000 people with Marin County, which could be an impetus to you know, like a faster commute rather than going down via El Cerrito del Norte and going up to Vallejo. It will be better if there's a rail connection linking Vallejo through the existing, well, I would say existing rail tracks that you are proposing to operate via Highway 121, the you know, like the existing tracks that you want to build out to Fairfield. Maybe you could, you know, help the city of Vallejo develop a passenger rail service, because they already are expressing interest in, you know, linking the city of Vallejo with the rest of the North Bay via rail.
Go ahead, Beth.
Thank you. I took a note. Thank you.
Yeah, I think directionally, it actually seemed really accurate to me. I think in developing a strategic plan, I would imagine it comes down to kind of rank ordering these items. So for example, on the threats piece, I mean, to me, it's like sales tax renewal gets 99 votes out of 100 from where I'm sitting, right? And the others are threats, but if we're not laser focused on that, then I think we're missing the boat here. So I'd just be curious to understand, yeah, how prioritization is going to be done in thinking through those four buckets. It's might be a rhetorical question, or it might be one that has an answer.
No, I think this is just a starting process of going through it. And then obviously with conversations with the COC, your feedback, personally, I agree with you. You know, and I think even when you see from the public in the word cloud, right? Sales tax renewal. And if you look at all those other words, you could really add all of those up. You know, people use different words and it came out differently in the word cloud. But I do think that sales tax renewal is SMART's #1 threat, and it will be looked at through that lens. Yeah.
I would like to just have more definition on maybe what for instance, the sales tax, what the strategic plan is to start a strategic plan regarding these items. So, you know, get that, knowing that's our #1 threat, what's our plan? Do we have one? And I know there's no there yet, but that's something that I'd like to know what the process is going to be.
Yeah, I think we have to work through that process, obviously with our board and with others. We will be sharing some information on April 3rd. Tune into that meeting. You know, so we'll be talking through these things. I think that that's a big part of this. You know, of just making sure that we're prepared as we look out over the next 5 years. What are the things that we ultimately need to do? And I think it goes without saying, passing a sales tax before March of 29 is at the very top of that list. It's
Thank
very
you.
critically important. But yeah, we'll have to develop that strategy.
And just to Anthony, your comments on working strategically with Vallejo Metro Q instructs the general manager and staff to focus on our rail line. So something like that, maybe you could reach out and give comments back or something like that, but, and I
Right.
don't know what.
So we are a part of those. So there was a presentation the other night, but we weren't directly invited to that, but we are in conversations with STA. Emily has attended some of their meetings and provided some level of feedback. They've sent us their presentation that they presented in Vallejo the other night. So we do have those meetings. What they're looking at right now is a connection from Vallejo up to the smart line. That's the area that they're looking at right now of how they could do that. And basically they're looking at the feasibility of it. But you're right, you know, it's a different service from what our main line is today.
I mean, that's understandable, but my main concern here is if, you know, like if Smart is looking to serve Vallejo directly, then you're gonna have a major opportunity to catch at least about 20,000-30,000 riders, because Vallejo in itself is like one of the larger cities in Solano County, and it has a ferry service that's available for for you to consider linking up to. Which means if if something goes wrong with Larkspur, passengers can be redirected to the Vallejo ferry service.
And I would hope that this becomes part of, because tomorrow night we'll be talking about extensions, right, in the workshop. And that will come up and be highlighted as to, what are things that Smart ought to be focused on. But I don't know how to put what we're talking about right now into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, or threats. Is it opportunity?
I would
Is that what
say,
you're saying?
yeah, I would say both. It's an opportunity and partly it's a threat because number one, we are essentially expanding our service area beyond our core area, which is Sonoma and Marin counties. But at the same time, it's also an opportunity for us to expand our horizon by linking areas in Solano County that have been traditionally left behind by transit, because they have the advantage of Interstate 80 plus Highway 37 plus Highway 12, which links Solano County with the rest of the country, essentially. So if we're going to use this opportunity now for the SWOT analysis to say, okay, we want passenger rail service to link Vallejo with the rest of the North Bay, that'll be great, because that means it could be an impetus to reducing congestion on Highway 37, which can also translate to a brand new transit service linking Novato with Vallejo, which has not seen any transit service on Highway 37 for many years.
I suggest you tune in tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. The Zoom link is on the website. And that's exactly what they'll be talking about is extensions, and you'll have an opportunity to put comments and opinions in there.
That's excellent.
You see?
I was wondering whether anything emerged from these sessions, or they aren't completed yet, but the ones that have been done, whether there are any totally unexpected issues that were brought up that we hadn't thought about.
I can say one thing that came up in the weakness is lack of airport connection. And we've been running a shuttle there for about a year. So the weakness may be lack of marketing, right? Or something communicating that. So other than that, nothing really comes to mind from the word cloud that was completely unexpected. But it's a good question.
From the word cloud, is there any way of ranking the ideas that came through by repetition thematically so that we can get some order to the ideas?
Because we didn't give people preset phrases to use, the functionality of the word cloud wasn't as strong, right? But what we did is the staff went through the responses, it was around 80 to 100 responses for each one. And then they manually sorted them into those lists that I showed you, into those categories. And as you'll see as we go through the next two, we did ask people to rank choices, and it becomes a little more clearer in the next slides.
Final question. Do you anticipate possibly doing a poll based on the results that you've gleaned from these workshops, so that, I don't know whether it would be more accurate, but it might give some weight to different thoughts?
That's definitely a possibility, doing an online survey. And that's one of the questions that we have for this group, is about process, right? And the best way to get information.
Zach?
Just a question on one of the weaknesses, which is around schedule and frequency of trains. I haven't heard that topic kind of brought up at any of the COC meetings since I've been here the last year. And I'm just curious, what's the current perception from staff on where SMART is on that? Is staff pleased? Is the board pleased with that frequency? How are we doing on that compared to the 2019 strategic plan, right? Are we running half the trains we wish we were running? Just curious to have some base level thoughts on where that is heading into the planning.
Yeah, I think we're above where we even anticipated being in 2019 with our 38 trips, and especially on the weekends running 16 trips. I don't think we even thought we'd be running that when the 2019 strategic plan was completed. You know, I've been in the transit business a long time. I don't care if you had 2-minute service, people would want it to be 1 minute, right? Because the more frequency you have, the better it is, right? And so frequency is always going to be one. You know, I think, you know, when people are saying that, you know, perhaps they would like to see 15-minute frequency. With our system, that's not possible. The 30s, is where we're at with our single track system and the way everything.
So 30 is a theoretical max, is that?
It is.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
helpful.
And, you know, then I think it goes in line too, you know, where we heard about, you know, later evening service and things like that as well. You know, frequency could also mean they want to see more frequency during midday, you know, when we kind of tone it down. And, you know, it's been interesting. And, you know, if I would have seen something like this or been talking about midday service, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, I'd have said, oh, no way, because traditionally ridership was like this, right? It was a big bell curve. Travel patterns have changed. So, you know, we're going to continue to monitor of how people need to utilize our system and make sure that we're adapting to the changing times. And I think our willingness and our ability to be able to adapt and change is a big reason for our ridership growth over the past couple of years.
And just a related question, right? The more trains there are, the more crossings there are that are being utilized. So, I work in downtown San Rafael, so very familiar with that crossing and that congestion. Are we already thinking about certain strategies to potentially alleviate some of those pain points? Because I think it goes straight to the support for SMART for folks not riding the train piece. If the only time they notice the train is when they're stuck behind it, that's not what we want, right? We want them on the train, or at least not having to wait 10 minutes behind one.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, this is something that we've been working on for the past couple of years. We do report to our board from time to time, especially for the mayor of San Rafael who sits on our board. We've made progress. It's still not perfect, right? But I was just talking to the train control manager a couple of days ago. He was telling me about conversations he's having with San Rafael and maybe some technology changes that could improve that. So we understand that it's an issue and something that we are focused on, and absolutely it needs to be part of, you know, this planning process and something that we work to continue to improve. Make sure it's on a radar.
And for the COC's edification, I'm sure we all live in different areas of North Bay. So downtown San Rafael is a known, I guess, congestion point. Are there others that we should all be aware of, or how do you think about that?
Nothing like downtown San Rafael.
Okay.
That is by far the one that we hear the most about.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
I'm curious, and maybe you don't have a handle on this, but are the participants that are coming to the workshops and participating, are they mostly riders or are they not riders?
You know, I think it's a mix. I'm going to tell you, anytime that SMART has, you know, something, whether it's a meeting like this, we see some regular faces. But it was refreshing in every one of these sessions I went through, and, you know, you can see the names on Zoom. There's people I had never seen before. right? There were some folks that I hadn't seen attend our meetings, but I knew who they were. And so I do think that we had a lot of riders. I would think that it was mostly people who utilize our system, or potentially even maybe it's just our pathways. But there were just some other interested parties that just heard about it, that were on there. Yeah, so I think it was a mix, but I think it leaned heavily to either riders or pathway users, depending on the session. Do you think that's accurate? Yeah.
And if the COC members have not been part of that process, there's 2 more workshops, one tomorrow night, one on the 27th. And if nothing else, just to see the process, I highly recommend that you tune in. I know I got to one, and if you can't do the meeting, there also is a place to put comments. So that's part of the process too. But if you haven't done it, I encourage you to attend at least one.
Mhm. That's great. Thank you.
All right. So on the threats portion, you mentioned the lawsuits that are out there. Are they all settled now, or are there more coming?
We always have running lawsuits. If you're referring to the pathway litigation, that has settled. But we always have tort litigation. We have injuries on the tracks and so forth. So they just, they take a long time to work its way through the courts or through settlement.
I think in the context of the SWOT analysis, they were referring to the pathway litigation. That the strategy at SMART was get everything shovel ready, but hold and, wait to see what was going to happen with the pathway litigation. A couple of years ago, the board made the decision to move forward. So it's kind of behind us, but people do recognize that litigation slowed things down a little bit. So I think that was the context of what they were referring to.
So then on that front, shouldn't an opportunity be safety? I didn't see that on the list. Did I miss it?
Yeah, safety should be a part of everything we do. Absolutely. It didn't make it in from the customer's perspective, but I think we have to look at everything through the safety lens. And I know this staff, from a safety perspective, that's always at the top of the priority list.
And so it may not be the right question, but are there things that we can do or the train can do to actually make it safer I'm always getting the alerts on my phone.
Mhm.
And I'll go to are there things that need to be done that aren't being done? And maybe that's not really the right way to phrase that
Yeah,
question.
no, we're always focused on, making everything as safe as we possibly can. So we're always looking at opportunities and looking at situations. Anytime that there's any type of incidents, we're going back and looking, determining what was the root cause, what could change, what could we do better. So we're always looking at things from that aspect. Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Emily?
Thanks.
Yeah.
So can we bring the presentation back up?
There we go. Okay.
A lot more to go.
That's right. On to ridership. So 2 years ago, we did a series of listening sessions on ridership. So we started off the evening on ridership by bringing up, what were the emerging themes in 2022. There were reasonable fares. This is what people wanted, right? When we asked people, what do you want? How can we improve ridership? This is what we heard. Reasonable fares, first last mile connections, alignment with transit providers, station and train comfort, more train service, overnight parking, reliability, safety, onboard amenities, and clear information. And so, starting there, for our session a couple of weeks ago, we asked people, what strategies should SMART use to increase ridership? And, this is another open-ended word cloud. You can see some of the biggest emerging themes there: first and last mile service, later hours, more train service, better connections, frequency, just all getting at those, improvements to service questions. Next slide. Thanks. So here's a list, having combed through all of the words from the word cloud. Here are the themes categorized. Greater non-peak service and train frequency, improve first last mile connections, increase public awareness and perception through advertising, targeted marketing, more onboard amenities, transit service to special events and hosting events on the train and at stations, ease trip planning and trip making, improve parking, free, reduced, and promotional fares, and expand the system. So after the open-ended word cloud, we brought up 10 strategy areas, right, that tend to cover most of the things that we've heard from people over the years. And we asked people to rank them. And I think this is an interesting thought exercise for people to have to go to, right? In a world of limited time and limited resources, where should SMART focus its priorities basically for the strategic plan? So in first place was first last mile connections. Second, local transit connections, which is also a type of first last mile connection, right? Trying to get you all the legs of your journey. Train schedule adjustments, system completion, and then marketing, service reliability, stationary amenities, fares, safety, and then onboard amenities. So we can back up to these slides if that's helpful during our discussion, but the question for you is, do the results of the workshop include the full range of strategies that we need to work on to increase ridership on SMART? And what are we missing? And do these strategy areas make sense as a basis for creating actions, as a structure for the ridership component of the strategic plan?
Anthony?
Okay, so the question is, okay, we're dealing with numbers one, I believe, like a ranks 1 and 2 in terms of first, last mile and local transit connections. I, as a person, who relies on public transportation, I have heard an earful of commentary regarding the last mile connection between the Larkspur station and the Larkspur ferry terminal. A lot of my friends have been commenting things like, why can't SMART build a train station directly next to the ferry terminal when there is a sea of parking that could be repurposed and rebuild it so that you can actually have a train station that will be right next to the ferry terminal, and then you're going to have a much shorter connection time rather than the current setup, which is the train line being about 10 to 15 minutes away from the ferry terminal itself. It's almost the question of, what are we missing here? Why can't we make that connection happen? Because a lot of these ferry riders, they really would like to take the train, but for some individuals who may have limited, walking ability or having sight issues or any other physical ailments, they may not be able to get between the ferry terminal and the train station in time for their trains. So a gap of 20 to 30 minutes may be okay for some people, but for others, they are really pressed for time, that it would be better if SMART can be proactive in thinking, can we actually put the train station next to the ferry terminal so that we can have not only a shorter turnaround time, but also fulfill the first and last mile transit connection that many of us have been wanting to see for years.
So I can say, for the purposes of this plan, I mean, we're well aware of the issue at Larkspur, and you bring up a really good point. And so under this framework, right, under first last mile connections, the strategy would be something like improve and invest in first last mile connections. And then the action would be, in the next 3 to 5 years, create a solution, right, between the train station and the Larkspur ferry terminal, such as a shuttle or such, to assist with the issue that you're talking about. So that's how what the issue you're bringing up would translate into the plan. Yeah.
I'm just curious, what does it cost to build another mile of track or 2 miles of track, especially when the track goes that way? Does it go that way? Is there a guesstimate?
I don't have that estimate.
Yeah, okay. It's a lot. Anybody else, Sherry?
Yeah, on ridership, I think it's helpful to think about, it helps us to put in context people's feedback when we think about, where they're coming from. So to my mind, we have different categories of users. And these are obviously generalizations, but the way I see it, we've got one category we do extremely well, and we basically don't meet the other categories. So folks who have shift work, who work on weekends, who like to go out late at night, like there's certain categories of people we don't serve. And there's one thing that we do pretty darn well. And so there's two ways to think about ridership. That is like, should we try to reach more of the people in the category that we do well, or should we try to meet more categories? So to my mind, for those of us who work relatively typical hours and commute between Sonoma and Marin, that could be school people or work people, we do that pretty well. We do it a lot better than we did a few years ago. The schedule is great. For folks who are willing to use a bike or a scooter for first, last mile, that's what we do well. So I don't know the answer to which of those things we want to do. Do we want new categories, or do we want to reach more folks in that category? Or at least do we know if we've maxed out that category? Is everyone who's willing to bring a scooter or a bike and does that commute, are they already taking the train? But I suggest that as a framework as we think about ridership and about increasing ridership. Which of these two things are we trying to do? And because they bring up different, there's different things we do if we're in those two different categories.
Looking for more comments? Go ahead. Jackie.
I don't fully agree that, I understand how system completion ties into ridership, but I think that's going to happen one way or another with a separate source of funds. So I think it's a little convoluting to kind of be talking about that as a function here. So that's just one comment to think about. The other one is, I think number 5, marketing. I think that's ranked too low from where I'm sitting. I think, it goes hand in hand with awareness and perception, and are we reaching new folks to use the train? I also think what Sherry said is a really amazing point, especially about like, I guess in the business context, you call this like personas of your buyer of your product. I'm curious if there's been work done on there's 8 different personas of the smart train rider, and we're doing great in buckets 1 and 2, and we're doing poor in 3 and 8, but there could be a segmentation approach to ridership that I'm not sure if we've done before or looked at before.
Yeah, great point. Thank you.
We'll just ask you to continue. Thank you so much.
Okay. So next topic, pathway. Again, we started with the results from the 2022 listening sessions. Those were pathway design and construction, create a pathway map, launch a wayfinding project, improve the bike capacity, gather data on the pathway, and improve pathway maintenance. So just to check in on the pathway today for some reference, we have over 28 miles completed at this point by SMART and our local partners. Based on our counters that are on the pathway, we average around 55,000 users of the path every month. There are currently 9 miles in construction that will complete 4 separate segments of the pathway. Another 5 miles have committed grant funds, and we're progressing design on 10 segments. And it's also important to remember that, the pathway is important for getting the riders to the train, and it's part of the SMART commitment to the voters, but it's also more than just the SMART pathway. It's part of the Great Redwood Trail, which is a 320-mile rail trail corridor between the Humboldt and San Francisco Bays. It's part of the long-promised San Francisco Bay Trail, the North-South Greenway, and shares designation with the Joe Brodota Trail and the Foster Creek Trail. So, delivering the pathway, it really is helping to deliver and connect separate corridors and communities. So at the pathway workshop, we again asked the same questions. What strategies should SMART use or include in the strategic plan to complete and improve the pathway? So you can see loud and clear, complete gaps right there in the middle. Build it, wayfinding, and then lots of smaller comments about marketing and completion of different segments and funding. And here's a summary of the themes that we heard. Build the remaining pathway, upgrade the pathway, install wayfinding off and on the pathway, more funding for the pathway, improve marketing, outreach, and improved connectivity. So when asking people to prioritize what is the most important, Probably not surprisingly, the top choice was construct the planned pathway. Okay. Second to that, complete design and permitting of the planned pathway. Installing wayfinding came in third. And then fourth was develop a plan for those future pathway segments that are not currently in the plan. Following that, pathway maintenance, improved mapping, improved website, bike parking, and then a few other answers. So the question for the COC is, do the results of the workshop include the full range of strategies needed to improve the pathway? What are we missing? And then do these strategy areas make sense as a basis for creating actions? And Brian, can you go back to the last slide for reference? Oh, sorry, Letty. Okay.
Lucy, what's the difference between wayfinding and improving pathway maps? Isn't one subsumed in the other?
Well, the wayfinding refers to signs that are out in the field on the ground. And the mapping, refers to maps that we have online currently or could be printed as paper maps.
Maybe as part of the pathways, suggestion, potentially, if you have an e-bike or an e-scooter, maybe recharging areas for them so that folks who need, folks who have e-bikes or e-scooters could use the pathway. And if, if their bicycle or scooter runs out of juice, there's an opportunity for them to recharge their bikes along the pathway so that they can continue their journey. I mean, e-bikes and e-scooters nowadays, have a range of about maybe 100 or so miles, but then there may be times wherein something goes wrong with their, a battery that they may need to recharge along the way. And maybe also, a water refreshment stations as well, so that cyclists can relax, after a long bike ride, and they can get a drink of water along the way.
Yeah, the most important thing to call out is SMART is in progress, making huge leaps on all of the top issues. So it's really a time to just call out the great work that's been happening. The most important things are already in progress. I wanted to call out, I was at this one and I was surprised how often people said amenities like landscaping and benches. It came up a lot. At this point, the infrastructure is starting to be provided and people are ready for the next step. Make it pretty. So I'll just, amplify what I was hearing at that session. There's a couple of things that, one I already said, I should have said it now and said it before, which is because in some places, these are well used. So let's start to think about maybe there's nothing more needed now, but how can we, as we construct new ones, be prepared for the future? Maybe the road bed is wide enough that if it needs to be widened, it can be, or, how can we incorporate that early on for parts that are not yet? Another thing I see coming, and I'll welcome staff thinking about if there's ways to incorporate this, is concerns around safety. There was maybe a year or two ago, there was some sort of police activity around an assault issue, a repeated assault issue in the area where I live and use the path. We live in a society that hasn't really met the needs of many people with substance abuse and other challenges. And sometimes public ways are a place where we're seeing those ways in which society is falling short. And so that falls on our public agencies that manage pathways. So we're going to need to start thinking about how do we address these when they come up. Someone stated at the listening session that they felt unsafe in the area where it connects with Joe Rodota. There's a lot of folks camped out there. I'm not saying that the rest of us have more right to use that pathway than they do, but we're going to need to start thinking about those conflict and safety issues going forward with the pathway. Thank you.
Looking to my colleagues, any more questions? We'll go to continue, please. Thank you.
Okay, so that was a summary of the 3 meetings we've had so far. We have 2 more meetings, one tomorrow night on extensions and another one on freight in a couple of weeks. But I wanted to walk through how we're thinking that information will feed into the structure of the plan. Okay, so to make the plan in a working effective document, we need to turn the strategies into actions. And so I put one example up here. So let's say our goal is to increase ridership by 50% by 2029, which is the timeframe of the plan. One strategy would be, let's make adjustments to the train schedule, right? As needed based on popular demand and based on ridership. And then under that category, two actions might be improve connections with Golden Gate Bus and Ferry and align service investments with highest demand times. So, you know, some other strategies could be things like improve last mile connections, right? Like, you know, you're referring to shuttles at different stations, including Larkspur, implementing a bike share program. These are all examples of very specific actions that would feed from higher level strategies. So I just wanted to see if this makes sense as a framework.
The only comment I would have is that a lot of these things are being implemented, and I don't see where we have a metric on what's really in progress and what's coming and what we have just haven't done anything with.
So-
For instance, the path, pathway signage and, things like that.
Mhm.
Done a lot of work, but what haven't we done?
So just one thing I wanted to respond to on that is one of the things I mentioned earlier was tying the strategic plan to the budget. So that's one of the things we started last year was we list the strategic objectives in there and then that we had at that time. And then we talk about the ones that we've funded and then whether or not they've been completed during that period of time. So it's supposed to be like a scorecard tied to the budget. Because if it's not funded, it typically doesn't get done, right? I mean, there's some things you can do without funding, but most things you can't, or some type of resource. So that is one way that we are trying now to show through the budget process up front, and then what's actually been completed is what's been funded throughout the year and how that ties back to the pillars in the strategic plan.
And obviously there's, some strategies, we already have in place. We're moving forward. We're making progress on the pathway. We're making progress on the extensions. Our ridership is growing. So the things that we've been doing, the stuff that we came up with in 2022, we put in place, those are paying dividends for us. Those things are working. Some of those strategies will continue on, but I think through this process, we have to be able to look at things. And I think that's why Emily had up some of the 2022 information. This is where we were in 2022, but it's 2 years later, things have changed. How do we need to adapt? And what does this look like over the next 5 years? But I think there will be some things that we'll acknowledge we're making progress. This strategy is continuing to work for us. And it'd be our recommendation to the board to continue with that strategy. I think that's what you're referring to, right? Got it.
I hadn't thought to look at it that way, so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
If I were to expand on train schedule adjustments, potential actions, there is one station in Novato that could benefit from this, Novato Hamilton. Currently, there is no direct transit service through that station, in which the closest stop for Novato Hamilton would be over by the Hamilton Theater Park and Ride, which is about a 7 to 10 minute walk away from the station. So since there is already some room for buses to circulate around the station, maybe include that as part of, like a deeper strategy, like station by station, so that we can have a more complete solution towards developing this strategic plan, because there are some stations already that are very successful, like Paloma Downtown or San Rafael or Santa Rosa. But others like Novato Hamilton are falling behind. I mean, the one for Novato Sonoma-Marin is already being used by Marin Transit, which is great. But for other stations like Novato Hamilton, for example, there is definitely no, transit connection unless you walk to the closest bus stop, which is either you walk towards Hamilton Theater parking lot, or there's a new stop closer to the station, but it's still not directly connected to the train station. So hopefully, you could do like a station by station, like a strategy, so that we can have a more complete picture as to how you want to increase ridership. by strategizing how can we make those stations more connected with the local and regional transit networks.
You bring up a good example of how these decisions here are related to the budget, right? As Heather was just explaining. So yes, and definitely where there's no bus stop at Hamilton Station, right? And we've had conversations over the years about trying to put one in there. There's infrastructure constraints, right? It's not impossible, right? But it is a decision for the budget that relates to where do those type of improvements land as part of the strategic process. So that's a good example. Yeah, thank you.
It is. I mean, Marine Transit already provides reasonable transit service through Novato, especially when it did its service readjustment not that long ago, in which they already added more service through Novato, and they really want to make sure that their buses provide excellent connections to other connecting transit systems like SMART and Golden Gate. So with this in mind, I really feel that at some point, we need, a better communication with the other transit agencies that SMART serves so that we can have a more robust, connected transit network.
Jack?
Is there any appetite to adopt mid-5-year metrics, meaning let's just say the goal was increase ridership by 50% by 2029 to also bake into the plan that we want to have increased ridership by 25%, halfway through that period? I'm just trying to think through the 5 years is a long time, and there's, I think, potentially interest in, having shorter term accountability baked in with the longer term accountability.
Yeah, that's a great, can I
Yeah.
say something? Sure. That's a great point. And you brought up extensions before and how do they play into this? I mean, for us, our ridership milestones are very tied to the extensions. The opening of Windsor is going to be a really big one. And for the meeting tomorrow night, we are going to talk some about that, right? Here's what's happening with extensions and why are they important? And here's how the system works as a network of stops, right? So I think, sorry, Eddie, did you have?
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, one of the things that is highlighted from time to time as an example is that SMART has not achieved its EIR goal, ridership goal, right, of 5,000 riders a day. That's true. But that number comes from the full system all the way to Cloverdale, Larkspur to Cloverdale, right? So with Petaluma North going in, Windsor going in, Hillsburg on the way, Cloverdale in the future, that changes everything in regards to that number. And so, as we think about what our increase in ridership is going to be, some of that is going, and I think that's the point Emily's making, is some of that's going to be baked into the completing the extensions. And so you've got the ridership number that comes with the marketing, the growing the system, the first and last mile connections, but ridership's also going to tell us how good of a job we are doing at completing our extensions as well, because that's going to reach additional markets.
And is there a way to measure how much of the increase in ridership is due to extensions being built versus getting more people in the existing corridor to use? I mean, those would just be super helpful, I think, metrics. I don't know how possible it is to measure.
No, we have data, right? We have data, and we're going to know what the boardings are per day at each of the stations. And so we'll be able to take a look at that and say, okay, well, we were at 2,700 a day or 2,800 a day. Windsor opened, and now we're at 3,500 a day, just throwing a number out there. And we have, 400 boardings a day at Windsor. You know what I mean? We'll be able to slice and dice the data. Emily's great. Emily and her team are great at putting out data and showing us really what's going on.
Yeah, I would hate to have let's say there's a year slippage on an opening of a station, and then all of a sudden the ridership goals you've adopted are useless, right? Because there's no way to achieve it without the extension. I think parsing it down to where everything's still achievable if one thing slips. It's all about what numbers everyone's signing up for, but I just think being super thoughtful about that in the plan is prudent.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Something we could think about as we're organizing this.
Does that conclude your presentation, Emily? Or do you have
I just
more?
wanted to remind you of the timeline. So
Okay, thank
we are there in March, COC workshop, March 13th. We have 2 more community workshops this month. And then starting in April and through the summer, we're going to be doing community presentations. similar content, getting input on strategies and actions for the plan. And then we'll be wrapping it up in the fall and bringing it back to the COC and the board.
Thank you. Good work, everybody. Tom, did you have a comment?
I do not.
All right. Any other last comments, guys?
I mean, with the work that you've done so far, I appreciate the amount of dedication and not just the hard work, but the commitment that you have to continuously improve SMART's overall role as a transit agency. I mean, with the likes of Caltrain and, Amtrak and the other rail companies, I really commend your agency to continue providing excellent, a rail service for the North Bay. Hopefully, this provides an opportunity for all of us here, not just on the COC, but from the general public as well, to consider how we can further improve our service, especially now that we have a new station coming up, Petaluma North. I really hope that with that station, we're going to have additional opportunities to further improve transit service within the city of Petaluma. Maybe we could add a transit hub at the station so that we can further promote connections within East Petaluma, wherein currently you only have one line, no, not really one, but like 333 and 11 plus 44. So you have at least 4 lines that you can work with to connect them to the upcoming Petaluma North Station. So hopefully this becomes an opportunity for all of us to further our horizons and make sure that SMART not only is an effective system, but is a system that really works with everyone here in, in its service area, which is Sonoma-Marin and soon Napa and Solano counties.
So if I could just say one thing,
Please.
As we think through, the ideas and the things that we want to do, it's really easy to write down great ideas, but then we got to lay the budget over the top of it. Okay. And there's not a limitless amount of money that's out there, right? So that's where this gets tough, is we get all these ideas, we get all these things that would be great to do, that we all want to do, but then we have to overlay the budget on top of that and say, okay, now what can we afford to do? And then that's when we have to start prioritizing things. And so it's great that we're collecting all of these ideas and thoughts right now, but at some point we do have to look at how do we fund those and what are ultimately our priorities. And then over the next 5 years, what are we going to invest in?
So I'm looking at this last slide, and I'm guessing that you're looking for some feedback. Does anybody have any other feedback other than that has already been?
I have a question about process. I just want to understand sort of our next follow-on steps. So like when you're in your conceptual hierarchy of there's goals and strategies and actions. And I think, you guys, hats off on the public outreach, you're there, you're listening, you're patient, great work. And that sort of informs goals and strategies. And then is it like where you're fleshing out how actions fit into that, and then we're reviewing all those steps? And is that what happened? When does that get fleshed out into what actions you're proposing support those strategies, and when do we review that? What's that process like?
Can we go back to the slide? Can we go back a couple of slides? Right there. Yep, that one. There you go. And so
go ahead.
the idea is here is we're here in March, right? So this is the COC workshop. It's March 13th. One of the things that we really wanted to do is we start to collect all this information, and this is what I'll be doing on April 3rd at the Sonoma County Alliance, is, starting to talk about these things and get additional feedback from the public in regards to how we're doing, other ideas, other thoughts, other opinions. And then we have another COC workshop on August 14th, where we're going to come back and say, hey, here's the additional information that we have, right? Get additional feedback from the COC. At that point, we can start to put together the draft strategic plan. This is when we're going to start to take all these ideas and then overlay the budget on top of it, because the strategic plan does have a huge financial component to it, right? And we'll create that And then we'll be able to really start to shop around that draft strategic plan, input from the COC. No, we think we ought to change these priorities, so on and so forth. And then we'll just work through that process. And then ultimately, when we're all comfortable with where we are, then we will be taking that finalized plan to the board for adoption. Does that provide the context?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other comments, I'm going to note that the next meeting of the COC is on May 22nd, 1:30 in the same room. And then I will look for a motion to
Oh.
adjourn.
Is
Oh,
there any public comment on that?
oh, I'm sorry. I don't have, it.
Perhaps,
It's not on my agenda.
yeah, sorry.
Do we have any public comment?
At this time, there are no hands raised for public comment.
Thank you. Seeing no public comment, we will at this time, and nobody in the room, we will at this time ask for somebody to adjourn. Thank you. I have a motion second. Can I think of anybody who wants to stay any longer? Thank you. This meeting is
Yep.
adjourned.
Thank you.